morning, everyone. My name is Ilham Nugraha in a postgraduate program of Business and Communication Management Batch 19, LSPR Communication and Business Institute. Today, I would like to present my thesis proposal with the title One ASEAN, One Response Roadshow, Comparative Analysis of Disaster Communication for Regional Preparedness and Response Mechanism in the Philippines and Malaysia. Introduction, background of the study. ASEAN countries have faced number of disaster caused by the natural hazard for the last 10 years. The number has significantly increased since 2019 up to now. There were 1,406 hazards in 2021, almost tripling the number of the previous year. Moreover, the number has been increasingly by 394 from the previous year, totaling 1,800 hazards happened in 2022. Based on the report from the ASEAN Center in 2023, from January 3rd, 2022 to January 1st, 2023, in a daily, there were an average of 5 disasters that happened in the ASEAN region, with 59,800 people affected, 4,300 people displaced, for dead, 1 missing, and 32 injured. The daily average loss was USD $1 million in damages in ASEAN countries from a total of 392 million USD in the Southeast Asia region. The trend has been evolving into a multi-hazard and multi-layered disaster that affects more than one country. 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, 2008 Cyclone Nargis, and 2013 Typhoon Haiyan are examples of large-scale disaster affecting many people and vulnerable groups, especially the countries nearby and their economic growth. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Reductions 2015-2030 is a global blueprint to substantially reduce disaster risk and losses in society, economy, and also environment. So the ASEAN commitment to the disaster emergency responses through the Sendai Framework is reflected in the alignment of the ASEAN Agreement on the Disaster Management and Emergency Response, or ADMER. Following these disasters, leaders from 10 ASEAN member states committed to flexibly contributing their assets and capacities to disaster management in ASEAN. The commitment is known as the One ASEAN, One Response Declaration, with the aim corresponding to the disaster in ASEAN and outside the region as one collective effort to gain speedy response, mobilize available resources, and build stronger coordination in ASEAN. One ASEAN One Response Roadshow, OAOR, is a primary activity to disseminate information about 3 things. The first one, disaster regional response mechanism between all stakeholders. The second is the coordinations in the level of roles of each agency during the disaster preparedness and response. The third one is the interoperability mechanisms between the ASEAN and other entities which is already existed, for example, within the ASEAN and United Nations and also with IFRC family. I myself, as the researcher, aims to examine how the AHA Center successfully communicate the ASEAN Disaster Management Mechanism to National Disaster Management Organization and identify how the intercultural communication elements contribute differently to the success of the socialization process in the Philippines and in Malaysia. Based on the background of the study that I explained earlier, now I identify 2 research problems in this research. The first one, does the AHA Center successfully disseminate the ASEAN disaster management mechanism through One ASEAN One Response Roadshow in the Philippines and Malaysia? And the second problem is that how does the intercultural communication elements contribute differently to the success of the dissemination of the information through the One ASEAN One Response mechanism in the Philippines compared to Malaysia? Based on the research problem, so I already identified the literature review for this research. The first one is the disaster communication theory brought by Hedo and Hedo in 2014. So Hedo and Hedo highlights 5 foundations to ensure that the disaster communication is successful. The first one is the targeting the audience. The second one is the commitment from the leaders. The third one is the inclusiveness of the communication in planning and also the operations. The fourth one is the situation awareness. And the fifth one is the collaborations with the media. Along with that, the second literature review is actually the intercultural communication theory by Ting To Me and Chung in 2012. So they confirm that in order to have like the intercultural communication, there should be like a context of the culture context in which there are through four elements. The first one is the practicality and also flexibility of the intercultural communication itself. The second one is the content components. The third one is the criteria. And the fourth one is the competence model. So ranging from the disaster communication theory and also intercultural communication theory, we can also adapt that it is all for the mitigations, preparedness response, and also recovery in the emergency phases. This research also coming from the previous study that is conducted by several of the people. The first one is, for example, Fiance in 2021. So they highlighted the needs of the communication strategy, especially on the disaster management, and also followed by the other colleagues such as Ferrer and also Rahman and also the other one. So 10 previous studies here in the list that you can see in the screen right now is actually talking about the disaster communication strategies in which that it should be applicable and also suitable for the needs of the member states. Now I'm going to show you the research framework of this study. So the research framework is actually coming from the awareness raising that is brought by the ASEAN through AHA Center, what we call as the One ASEAN, One Response Roadshow. So One ASEAN, One Response Roadshow is actually conducted in two countries, the first one in the Philippines and the second one in Malaysia. And from that one, a respective national disaster management organization invited several stakeholders, for example, like National Disaster Management Organization, local government, international non-government organizations, and also media. And also it is also happened in Malaysia. So both of them, when they discuss about the disaster communication and management, they will be intercultural communication within it. And after that, what they really want to suggest and what they really want to discuss is actually the ASEAN disaster communication and ASEAN preparedness and response mechanisms. And after that, we will be seeing whether what is going on in Philippines and what is going on in Malaysia is we can categorize as successful or not, and whether the intercultural within two countries is actually contributing to the success of One ASEAN, One Response Roadshow. So for the research methodology, I would like to invite you to focus on three things. The first one is the research design, and the second is the methodology, and the third one is data analysis. For the research design, so interpretive paradigm is used to understand a reality in the disaster communication management process in ASEAN, and also which is subjective and also highly influenced by the social context, structure, and also the individual experience. The second is methodology. So this research is using the qualitative method, meaning that I will conduct the research through three triangulations. The first one is the direct observations, which is I attended One ASEAN, One Response in the Philippines and Malaysia. The second is I conducted the semi-structured interview to several members. And the third one is the document analysis. Usually it is used and produced during the One ASEAN, One Response conduct. And the last one is the data analysis through, like I explained earlier, for the data collections. It will be through the field observations, the interview, and also document analysis. And the second one is the data reduction. So I followed the 7 guided steps. And also the last one is data display. So more or likely, I will be providing the comparison in a narrative format for this research analysis. So there are two big elements for this research, and I would like to focus on two things. The first one is the conduct of One ASEAN, One Response, whether it is successful or not, by using the framework of the HEDO and HEDO in 2014. So meaning that HEDO and HEDO highlights the 5 dimensions of the foundations of the successful disseminations processes, and also the data collection techniques. I will do 3 of them, which is the direct observations. Uh, the second one is the interview, and the last one is the data analysis from the documents produced. And the second focus is actually on the intercultural communication. So I will be using Sting to Me by 2012, and also it will be having several dimensions that I need to conduct and see. And the data collection techniques is similar with what I conducted earlier. For the research analysis, there are 5 dimensions of the research analysis that I'm going to conduct. The first one is the dimension 1, is the disaster communication strategy foundation. So for the dimension 1, so it will be following HEDO and HEDO by 2014. So there is 5 foundation. The first is target audience. The second is the commitment from the leaders. The third one is inclusivity. And the fourth one is the situation awareness. And the fifth one is the collaboration with media. What is going on in the Philippines and Malaysia is actually ticking off the box, and all of them is actually happened there. For the dimension two, it is intercultural process and strategy. So the Filipino society encompasses three fundamental ideas, namely haya, pakikisama, and utang na loob. So haya manifests a sense of shame when someone make mistakes, for example, and when someone is making engaged and inappropriate behavior. So they're really afraid and shame about that one. So pakikisama refers to the ability to easily socialize with the others, meaning that you can mingle with one another in a very quick way. And lastly, utang na loob refers to the state of always being thankful for everything that you do. So you can imagine and you can see that in the Filipinos traditions, so if there is someone who needs your help, and then if the needs for the disaster management is there, so the Philippines is really accommodating these ideas. Meanwhile, in the Malaysia, for example, it is a nation with predominantly Muslim populace, so it consists of three predominant ethnic groups. The first one is Malay, Chinese, and also Indians. So they preserve using their own ethnic language while embracing the respectful attitude when they have a social interaction. So in principle, for people in Malaysia, when they have a different ethnic meets and interact in a day-to-day business, people will sense mutual respects and cohabitation of the different cultures and identity. So this principle is what they acknowledge as a socio-culturalism in a mutual and respectful way. So for example, in the disaster management processes, so people in Malaysia will respect one another as long as it is helpful for the thankful of the human being. The third dimension is the communication practicality and flexibility. So like I mentioned earlier, in the Philippines, they have a three local context ideas, and also for the Malaysia they also have the same principle. So in short, both in the Philippines and Malaysia, they are very practical and flexible when the case of the disaster, especially for the disaster that is actually happened in their countries. So the dimension 4 is the content component and three criteria. Both in the Philippines and Malaysia, so they consist of 4 components. So the first one is the National Disaster Management Organizations, who is providing information and also disseminations process. And the second is actually the ASEAN Secretariat, placed as a secretariat in the region to provide more information on the policy level. And the third one is the AHA Center as the operational engine of the ATMER itself, who will conducting One ASEAN One Response Roadshow itself. And the fourth one is the UN OCHA as the agency who is really supporting ASEAN through the AHA Center for time to time as the operational and interoperability organizations, and also showing the similarities between two agencies. And by having these ones, we also having one more, which is the other entity, such as like private sector and also media. So the component is clear there, and the criteria is already met. The dimension 5 is the intercultural communication competence stairs. Both in the Philippines and Malaysia, they have 4 levels of stairs. The first one is that most of them, they are aware about the culture, but they don't have any ability to show in the communication settings. So we can imagine and we can see from the National Disaster Management Organizations and other entities such as the private sector, they are at this stage. The level 2 is actually they understand about the culture context, but they do not have any ability or limited knowledge and skills to effectively negotiate with the other entity. And I think we can also see from the data analysis that it is spread over the National Disaster Management Organizations and also the other entities such as private sector and also media itself. The level 3, so all organizations is actually proactively work enhancing their mutual and benefit of communications by acquiring more information and multicultural knowledge. So at this level, I think most of the national disaster management organization, especially the senior level, they have at this level already. And also the last level is the highest level, meaning that all of the organization's members and also individuals, they are effectively and also naturally engaged with any other context of communication, so that the member is now having a good culture and good collaborations with the other partners and also with the other stakeholders. There are research findings that I already identified. So the first one is that the One ASEAN One Respond Roadshow conducted both in Philippines and Malaysia were successful. So the study conducted by Hedo and Hedo highlights the importance of 5 foundations that must be met for effective disaster communication. The second, that there are key principles of intercultural communication conducted during the roadshow, employed the concept component of knowledge and culture from the respective organization to disseminate disaster management mechanisms to participants. This research have 2 recommendations. So the first one, disaster communication framework should incorporate intercultural communication models to enhance the understanding and effectiveness of the examinations process. The second recommendation is actually the National Disaster Management Organization or NDMO and other relevant agencies should invest in regular training programs that focus on the intercultural communication skill. So these programs is actually should cover knowledge dissemination, empathy building, collaboration techniques, and also cultural sensitivity. Thank you for my advisor, families, friends, and colleagues from the AHA Center, from the ASEAN Secretariat, UN OCHA, NATMA Malaysia, and OCD Philippines who helped me finalizing this thesis. Dear colleagues and friends, this concludes my presentation today. So I welcome for any input, comments, and also questions. Thank you.